The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
We have said it before on this podcast, Sean Connery's portrayal of Secret Agent 007 absolutely kicked open the door for spy hero stories in the 1960s. A new genre was literally born in 1962 with Dr. No, and the James Bond franchise would go on to long outlive United Artists' existence as a major film studio. I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we like to talk about spy movies.
Many film and TV studios scrambled to capitalize on the newly emergent spy action hero concept, and we're going to talk about the first one to capitalize on the 60s spy craze gold rush. We are really excited to talk some The Man From U.N.C.L.E. this week on Spies Like Us. We begin this episode with a conversation with Fred Kennedy, a fan of the Man From U.N.C.L.E. television show that we met through our Facebook group.
So when I originally jumped on, I saw you on Facebook, and I saw the discussion about Get Smart. And somebody made the comment, this was the first time that 007 was spoofed. And I just jumped in and said, no, actually it was the Man from U.N.C.L.E. that was the first spoof on James Bond. In fact, Ian Fleming wrote the character Napoleon Solo for the pilot.
Right.
He didn't write the actual pilot, he wrote the character. So there was a connection with Ian Fleming. And the first season was in black and white in 1964, and it was kind of serious. It was kind of like Eastern Europe, and the bad guys were kind of like the Eastern European totalitarians. In fact, there was one episode where they were trying to bring Thrush, or somebody was trying to bring Hitler back to life, right? Napoleon kills him, kind of a thing. So as the seasons went on, season 2 became in color, and it started to get a little campier. The music got really much better because as the 60s went along, it got more jazzier and rock and roll. And Jerry Goldsmith did the overall theme, and it was the first year was kind of like militaristic with drums and so on. But then, like I say, as the 60s went along, it got a little jazzier and rock and roll with the bass.
Yeah, I was keen to see that he kind of revamped the theme music for each season.
Well, actually, he didn't. He didn't like the revamping. It was a couple guys named Robert Drasnin and Gerald Freed. I have the soundtrack here, and also in the DVDs, Jerry Goldsmith did not like the version to become more rock and roll and jazzy, but I loved it. It was like I say, it grew with the 60s with the heavy bass and sax. It almost like in the third season, there's a sax solo that sounds like Bobby Keys doing Brown Sugar. You know, that nasty sax and Brown Sugar.
Yeah.
And the high shrill Hammond organ B3, and brass. And it was great. But from what I've read too, that kind of like the music tried to mirror the campiness. Batman on ABC was
1966,
over the top campy.
Yes.
If you've ever seen some of those. So I guess NBC, Man from U.N.C.L.E. thought, okay, we want to get in on this, but it got too silly. They had Napoleon dancing with a gorilla, doing the Watusi. They had a hiccup gas that you died of hiccups.
It surprises me to hear. Help me out with this. It kind of surprises me to hear that they were making such drastic changes to a show which I understood to have been like a massive hit right out the gate.
Right. Well, at first they couldn't find it. From what I've read, I didn't know at the time, I was like 9 or 10, but from what I've read about it, they had a hard time finding an audience at first, till they changed the time. And then they got really hooked with the college crowd. The college crowd really liked them. And, they were up against Bonanza and some other big shows. But it seemed to find a way in that once they changed the time.
What about
I loved it. To me, it was like growing up in the 60s with the Beatles, and especially David McCallum, the Ely Kuryakin.
Right. Yeah, I was reading up about him. I'm really excited to see this character.
Yeah, he was cool. I mean, he was really, even though he was a little older, they featured him in like Tiger Beat and those 16 magazines. is kind of a like a
he received more fan mail than any actor in MGM history, including Clark Gable and including Elvis.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I remember he had quite a Hollywood career too. I remember him in The Great Escape. He was killed in that by a Nazi running down a train, and he was married to Jill Ireland. I don't know if you knew that.
I don't know that actor.
She was an actress, and then she married Charles Bronson, and then died of cancer. So she was married to McCollum first, and then she married Charles Bronson. But she was in a few of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. shows too, and she was quite an actress on her own. You could Google her; she's blonde, and married Bronson later. But
I wanted to ask you about the transition to color. Because I mean, I guess at the time, I mean, I read that they shot the pilot in color,
right?
But then the first season was in black and white. So I guess that was a time at which color was available, but was possibly like a budgetary constriction, and maybe only your primetime shows were showing up in color.
Yeah, I think so. It was a big deal. Back in the '60s, if we were ever. Because I remember we'd be out playing and we'd run inside to see the Wizard of Oz, and it was a big deal if somebody had a color TV, especially
right.
when she landed in Oz, when it was in color. But yeah, it wasn't until about the '70s when like 19-inch color TVs made by RCA became a big deal, and everybody in our neighborhood finally started to have them in the '70s.
Even let's see, I was born in '71, and even up through grade school, I think typically a family would have one. If you had multiple TVs in the house, usually just one of them would be color.
Yeah, exactly.
And the others would be black and white. And I remember kids at school actually not believing me when I told them that we had 2 color televisions in my house. They said, "No, you don't. Nobody has 2."
Yeah.
What was the first color television show, do you think?
I want to guess that it was Disney, because Disney used to have this show on Sunday night called The Wonderful World of Color, Wonderful World of Disney.
Okay.
So I don't know though, because they made, and I think NBC kind of pioneered color for color TV, and Disney was on NBC. So, but I don't know for sure if that was the first.
Right. Let's put this in context against James Bond, who I hope you won't. I mean, I don't think you can disagree with me on this. Like, really kicked open the door for spy stuff.
It did. Yeah.
It's almost amazing to think that audiences and content creators couldn't even conceive of a spy being the hero of a show,
right? Up
until he came along, and that's of course with Dr. No in I think '61, and then. And then they were banging them out. They were coming out with one like almost every year. Like right. I think the first 5 years they only missed one year. So they always conceived that to be like a franchise. Did you know
Broccoli, right?
I'm sorry?
He was the Broccoli. He was the producer.
Oh yeah, exactly. In fact, it was that's why we got Sean Connery. Because Cary Grant didn't want to sign up to do. They were asking him to sign up to do 7 films right off the gate. They already wanted to do 7 films, which is absolutely how we do business these days. But it was kind of surprising that they were that forward thinking in 1960. And but Cary Grant didn't want to put up with that. But Sean Connery, who was relatively unknown at the time, he said, "Show me the money."
Yeah, well, I think Cary Grant would have been too old. He wouldn't have had the staying power, too, like Sean Connery. Sean Connery, right, was significantly younger than Cary Grant, wouldn't he have been?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yes,
and
definitely.
Even if he took it, he wouldn't have been able to make too many of them, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And being able to weather the storm. Well, that was getting back to the Man from U.N.C.L.E. That was so strange. I mean, it was at the height of the Cold War. And to take a Russian, see, U.N.C.L.E. was supposedly kind of like, I don't know if the closest thing, not quite Interpol, but it was this, not just America, but it was stationed all over the world, the United Network Command for Law and Enforcement, not law enforcement. They're always talking about that. But to take a Russian, right, at the height of the Cold War, Ilya Kuryakin, and have him be the co-star, like originally it was going to be the Man from U.N.C.L.E, Napoleon, the James Bond kind of character. But then, from what I have read, Ilya was such a star, was such an attraction with the fans that they demanded more of him.
Mm-hmm.
So he became just as much in the episodes as Vaughn. And Vaughn, was more like the James Bond, more of the adult character, where Ilya was more of like the Beatles, kind of younger, long-haired, popular with the younger ones, where, and they kind of played off that a little bit. But that was kind of to pair a Russian at the height of the Cold War, right?
Sure. As a science fiction fan, I'm always fed the fable that Pavel Chekhov was like a real like breakout that, people often credit Roddenberry, with breaking that door open of putting a Russian as a, not a mustache twirling villain in a show.
Yeah.
And I think that's well, it's unfortunate that that the Man from U.N.C.L.E is overshadowed in that respect.
Well, and I just saw something the other day where Star Trek was like way ahead of its time by, with its multi-ethnic cast, very, very progressive that way, and women and,
right.
being at home. And
Chekhov was put in to be, to draw in a younger audience. That's why he has the Beatles haircut. And he's a younger character. And it looks to me like they were like the Star Trek people were directly looking at the Man from U.N.C.L.E and saying, let's get some of that energy into our show.
I never thought of that.
Makes sense if you think about it, though, right? Yeah. Beatles haircut, Russian.
Yeah, and then Ilya's hair got longer. Like in the 4th season, it's really long. More Beatlesque, but I mean, thinking, that's 68, the Summer of Love, 67, 68, right in the middle of the 60s. So that really made sense. But and it's weird. Did you see the Man from U.N.C.L.E movie a couple years ago? With
2015, Guy Ritchie. No, I have not, but I plan to.
Henry Cavill and right, okay. Hugh Grant played the Mr. Waverly. Let's see, who was the Ilya guy? Oh, Army Hammer. You never saw that?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay, it's good, and they say I thought it was pretty good, but it's a prequel, and I think one of the reasons why it didn't do better is because it was like in the summer, like right between two big blockbusters. I want to say a Batman or a Jurassic Park or kind of a thing. And it got kind of overlooked, but it's a prequel. And it starts out with Ilya being in the KGB, right? And Napoleon being in the CIA. And they come together to solve this. And at the very end, it's sort of a misnomer, and they don't even say it's a prequel, but at the very end, they have almost where the credits are, they have, what did I say? Hugh Grant. Yeah. Playing the Mr. Waverly. They throw up in the credits that how at the very end, Hugh Grant brings them both together to start this new organization called U.N.C.L.E. But throughout the whole movie, it's not U.N.C.L.E. But what's really ironic is that Ilya, okay, is being Army Hammer's character has to watch this Gabby, who would later be at the end of the movie. We find out she's really an uncle. So the irony is the girl from U.N.C.L.E came first in this. Now they had a show. Did you know that A Girl from U.N.C.L E was Stephanie Powers? Did you know that?
I did read a tiny bit about it.
Okay. That was real campy. That was right around the same time as the 3rd season campiness. But I thought this is really weird because you find out, of course, I just did a spoiler. You find out at the end of the movie that this Gabby is in U.N.C.L E, right? Sort of undercover.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the girl from U.N.C.L E, which would come later in the TV story, I mean, so it's weird. And so the whole thing's a prequel. So I don't know if they're ever going to do another one. It was, who's Ritchie, the guy, Madonna.
Guy Ritchie, yeah.
Yeah, I think he directed it. It wasn't bad.
He's working on 2 spy movies right now.
Yeah.
One of them is a World War II and a something else.
I think they're after him to play the next Bond.
Who's that?
Cavell.
Okay.
I mean, he's one of the ones that
I see lots of lists.
I had a really interesting all this back and forth about the next Bond, should it be female or a person of color? And I thought the way demographics are, okay, the British have a sizable Islamic population of people of color. All right. So it would kind of make sense if the British did have a person of color being the next 007. Demographically, and the imperialist British, I could see them wanting to possibly infiltrate a Muslim country, and I could see them doing it with a person of color being the next James Bond.
I would love to see Idris Elba do it. I really would. That would be my dream pick.
But the thing is, what I'm saying, demographically and politically, it would make sense because they have a sizable Islamic population, right? So I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to have an African British James Bond in that way. I don't know. Call me crazy.
No, I'm with you on that. But I think I can't go female with Bond. I don't personally.
Okay. All right.
There's just too much. There's too much machismo like intertwined, directly into the DNA of the character. Not that I don't like, female action heroes. I really do. I really do. In fact, I'm kind of hoping that. Do you like the Mission Impossible movies?
Yeah.
The female character that showed up in the last two that is absolutely is portrayed as being as badass as Ethan Hunt. If Tom Cruise were to ever decide he's getting too old for that, if she was still up for it, I would love to see them just straight up continue that series with her at the helm. I think that would be really exciting.
Tom Cruise is, to me, he just was so miscast as not only Jack Reacher, but the Vampire Lestat. I mean, have you ever read the Vampire Chronicles, Anne Rice?
I still like him in that movie.
Right, but have you read those books?
Just the first one.
Okay. Lestat is a very tall, larger than life, androgynous kind of figure with long blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and even Anne Rice was against it. Anne Rice was kind of won over afterwards, right?
That's
true.
But
even then you go to the Jack Reacher. He's a larger than, I don't know if you've read any of those books, but he's a large kind of G.I. Joe kind of character. And I just didn't think Cruise did the best he could, I thought, but I don't know. I just thought, according to the books, I thought they were kind of miscast in that way. So you go with female action heroes. Everybody talks about Sarah Connor, but I remind people that Ripley was the first Hollywood female action hero. People forget about her, don't they?
She's the reigning queen as far as characters go.
Yeah, before Sarah Connor, right?
Yeah, as far as actors go, though, I'm such a huge fan of Charlize
Theron?
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as a milestone, a first, I think people forget about that Ripley did it way back when.
Yeah, well, I don't forget because that's right in my wheelhouse. I'm born in 1971, so
I love those alien movies.
Yeah, me too.
The first one was like Hitchcockian suspense, and the second one was more action oriented.
Well, right? I really like that in a franchise. Is when they have a concept, but each movie you put a different directing style onto it. 3 was garbage, but I know 4 was kind of divisive, but I really liked 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm even on board for the newer ones. And then Mission Impossible is another really interesting franchise in that respect, in that, except for the last 2, which were done by the same guy, each of them has a very different auteur director at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
Between Brian De Palma, John Woo, Brad Bird, very different styles, but they're all taking a different stab at the same kind of story. Which
you mentioned De Palma. I remember back in the late 70s, there was the big debate: who was going to be the next Hitchcock? Who was going to take over? Because they were both John Carpenter and Brian De Palma were both disciples of Hitchcock, and it's like who was going to be, the one, and I don't know, they both kind of, I don't know if you remember or reading about that, but that was the big debate. Is John Carpenter or De Palma going to take over from Hitchcock or be the next Hitchcock, kind of a thing? So that kind of panned out.
Right. Petered out, I think you mean.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. I think the most post-Hitchcock Hitchcockian movie, in my opinion, that I've seen would be The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Okay.
I thought that's a great movie, and it just
check it out.
It just screamed Hitchcock at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So update. Dave did text me a little bit ago. He had to work late. I'm glad we're having so much fun with this conversation. You sound like you're full of energy.
And I'm 66 years old.
Glad to hear it. Because we're gonna watch that episode when Dave gets in here. Oh, so okay. My new question. How many seasons are there of The Man from U.N.C.L.E?
4.
Only
3.5 really, because they canceled it in the 4th season, or 4, in midstream.
Only 4. So I don't know. I'm starting to get confused here. Like on one hand, I keep reading and hearing like it was like a monster hit at the time, but then maybe they just shot themselves in the foot by trying to adapt and turn it into something that it wasn't meant to be.
That's the conventional wisdom, that when it went campy and tried to copy Batman, that killed it. And then when they try to write it in the 4th season, it was too late. That's at least the conventional wisdom.
Okay.
Because they did try in the 4th season to get a little more serious, but like I say, they lost their audience. And I wasn't aware of any of that at the time. I was just a kid and stuff, but I just from reading, the hindsight.
So was it? You say you were 9 or 10 when the show came out. Was it like literally like your favorite thing ever, or did you just kind of come around to it later?
It was my favorite thing. Yeah, I was just really, and like the music really turned me on, and that's why I have mixed feeling about the 3rd season, because I love the music in it so much so that I bought the soundtrack. Now, a characteristic of each show, which I thought was, I don't know, kind of annoying, but they felt that they had to do it. I don't know if you've read this, but a characteristic of each show would be to always have an innocent, usually a woman, many times a suburban housewife, swept up with one or both of them in the adventures. Like a gee whiz, golly, gee willikers kind of a thing, and so so they almost every episode they have that innocent, housewife usually tagging along with them.
Right. Well, that could feed into like the whole like Hitchcock era proto spy genre, where they didn't realize they could just literally have a spy be our hero and be our audience surrogate.
Right.
And so like, that's why like, The Man Who Knew Too Much and stuff that comes before Bond, like you start getting into some kind of spy-ish territory, but the main character is always, an everyman or every woman that's in there. So I guess they felt, and you say you're just meh about that?
I just thought it got tiresome after a while. I wanted to see more of an action kind of a thing rather than have the silly look. And I know they thought, they had to cater to the audience that way, but I just thought it was tiresome after a while.
Do they have? I understand that like there's very few recurring characters, but were there ever any like Thresh villains that kind of showed up multiple times?
Oh yeah,
stuck around?
There was a bunch of them. One of the weird things was in The Girl from U.N.C.L.E, they had Noel Harrison. Let's see, what was the one I saw? Noel here. Oh yeah, in the Galeta affair, they had Noel Harrison, who would later be teamed with Stephanie Powers. And in the Galeta affair, Napoleon, for whatever reason, can't make it. And Joan Collins is just so young and beautiful in it. She plays two roles, and this was a whole spoof on My Fair Lady. You know, the whole premise of My Fair Lady is where those two guys have the bet whether they could turn this street urchin into a lady. You know that premise, right? Of My Fair Lady.
Well, I saw the Eddie Murphy movie.
Well, yeah. So My Fair, and there's a play called The Egg and I too that was based on. But the whole idea is these two guys have this bet and Audrey Hepburn plays the gal in My Fair Lady, and she's a street girl with a strong Cockney accent. And Rex Harrison and this other guy, Rex Harrison thinks that he can turn her into a lady, right? And the other guy says, no way. And so that's the whole premise of the movie. So anyway, in the Galeta Affair, Joan Collins is in it, and she plays both roles. You know, she plays the Baroness, you know, the lady, and she plays the street gal. And Thrush does the old switcheroo, right? And so anyway, but the point is, Mark Slate, the character played by Noel.
Oh, so it's one of those things where, like, you know, somebody is like stroking their chin at some point and saying the resemblance is striking.
Yeah, but
you know, one of those things, like, hey, we could do this.
Yeah, and they do. See, but both Uncle and Thrush want to do the switcheroo, right? And it's like, which one is the real one? So eventually the point is she does learn the ladylike, so they can't really tell who's acting and who's not. And for example, in My Fair Lady, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plane. In this one, it's like the police in Greece do something in the
Right.
Yeah.
What's the name of this episode? I've got to see this.
The Galeta Affair.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on my list.
Joan Collins. The only reason why I didn't choose that is because Napoleon wasn't in it, and Napoleon shows up in the end and gets Joan Collins.
Napoleon being the main character, the main American character, played by Robert Vaughn.
Yeah, so I don't know, he couldn't make it or whatever. I think Stephanie Powers was in a few Uncles too. You know how they go back and forth with their characters, because she was the girl from Uncle, but that only lasted one season, I think.
Can I just throw out that Napoleon Solo is simultaneously like one of the coolest and stupidest names I've ever heard for a hero.
Yeah. Well, that's what's his name? The James Bond guy came up with that name.
Oh, Fleming. Oh, that's right. That's right. And that was part of a whole lawsuit kind of thing that maybe was kind of holding the thing up. Because let's see, originally they wanted to call it Ian Fleming's Solo. Yeah. And even though Ian Fleming didn't really create the show, it sounds like the show's creator very cleverly or craftily approached Ian Fleming to get his input and contribution just enough so that they could put his name on it, because that's the whole thing that they're trying to do. They're trying to cash in on James Bond. Right. But there were some lawsuits, things and stuff, and I guess the Solo name stuck, but I guess it was Paramount. Paramount is the James Bond people, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong.
And MGM is, I think, are the Uncle people.
Right. And wait, no, it can't be Paramount, because that would put I'm gonna look that up real quick.
Whoever Broccoli was. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Let's see. Production United Artists.
Oh yeah, that would always be the iconic symbol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's still one of the franchises that keeps the lights on over at UA, I'm sure. I got a cool maybe little anecdote for you. I picked up off of I think from Wiki. In the pilot, like, there was an executive that didn't like the Ilya character. Mm-hmm. And could you go ahead and pronounce his last name for me?
Kuryakin. Yeah.
And the executive was saying, like, you got to get rid of that one Russian with the k, and he couldn't pronounce the name. And he was just saying, he was just saying, like, the one that starts with K, and the showrunners. There's another. I guess there's another Russian character that also his name starts with a K, and so the guy said, "Oh, do you mean that guy?" And the executive said, "Yeah, sure." And so he just agreed with him because he didn't want to get rid of the Ilya character. And so he was just like kind of using the executive's inability to pronounce the name. And then by the time the executive found out, the contracts had already been signed.
Wow. No, I did not know that story.
That's a fun little behind the scenes.
Well, he was a fan favorite. That's why they kept him. And because I think they started out that it was going to be Robert Vaughn as the main character. But
I want to go. All right. So Dave passed by into his room like quite a few minutes ago. I motioned.
I'm here.
To get on. Oh, there he is.
I've been here for a while. You guys are just in the middle of a conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. You should have just shouted out, buddy. Yeah. Well, dude, having a lot of fun talking with Fred here.
Sounds like it.
Sounds
like Fred knows quite a bit about this.
You're gonna have to go back and it's gonna be interesting. I want you to go back and listen to this.
You know what I'd love you to do? I mean, if this is a Spies R Us, I'd love you to take on the 3 Days of the Condor.
It's definitely on our list. It's
that's on our list.
That's a big one.
It's so prophetic because to me it predicts the Iran-Contra affair because it's about an organization within the CIA, and they play these. Have you seen it?
Not yet.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
Not yet, but I've got a massive hard-on for it.
Yeah, it's a precursor to what we would later on see when Ali North said, I think, the director, meaning Casey, thought an organization within the CIA would be a good idea. That's what this is about, a rogue org. Max Sido is in it, Faye Dunaway, and of course, Robert Redford. And the basic premise, without giving too much away, is they're bookworms. They're in this building where it's a CIA, but they're bookworms, and they're in this building where they're just supposed to read books, right? And they stumble on this contingency plan. It's a novel, but they stumble on this contingency plan that is something real. So he goes out to lunch, and he comes back, and they're all killed. They're all shot. They're all killed. So he goes on the run, and he doesn't know where to go or why it happened. But because he's not a field agent, he's unpredictable. They don't know where the hell he is or where to find him.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
I mean, it's we try to, I don't know if you've ever looked at our catalog, but we try to do like all kinds of spy movies. Like we're really trying to stretch out and hit all the nodes. And yeah, definitely like those classic 1970s or like 1960s and 1970s Cold War stuff is like kind of our wheelhouse. But that
was so far ahead of it. I think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen.
I'm gonna grab some something to drink before we start the episode.
Sure.
I'm going to leave with you with Dave, and what I want you to do is explain to Dave in as much detail as you can in the couple minutes that I'm going to be gone, like why you chose this episode for it. Tell us which episode we're going to watch and why you chose it, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Sorry for being a little late. I had to work and had to get here. Yeah.
I chose this episode because when I first saw the Facebook, it said something about Get Smart being the first spoof on James Bond, but I said no, Man From U.N.C.L.E. was, especially this third season, which got kind of really over the top spooky, Right. In fact, that's when they lost it. I don't know, you probably overheard us saying they became campy because they were trying to copy the campiness of Batman,
Right.
So, but I love the music of this third season. It got real jazzy with B3 Hammond organ, guitar, bass. But and then they tried to reset it in the fourth season, and they weren't able to.
Okay.
All right, I'm back. You guys ready?
Yeah, I'm having trouble finding this DVD, the episode.
Okay,
But
you
I think
take
that
you take your time with that. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and stop and check and make sure, because I've never recorded on Zoom before. So that was from just before we watched the show for the first time, and we did have Fred along for the ride on that. And we did record that. I'm going to tell you more about that recording at the end of this episode. Right now, we're going to skip ahead in time until after David and I had watched episodes from all 4 seasons. Trust me, it's all going to make sense by the end. So we're here to talk about the television series from 1964, Seminal spy television series, The Man from U.N.C.L.E, which ran only 4 seasons from 1964 to 1968. But was a big hit for its time. Not a monster. It's not up in the top 5, but it's a pretty important, successful show. And we've talked before about the early 60s and how James Bond with those movies kicked the door open for the spy genre, and everybody else suddenly flooded in. Man from U.N.C.L.E is pretty much the first to follow Bond through the door.
You can really see the influence of Bond on the show from what we watched, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about, Ian Fleming was a consultant, at least. What it looks like to me, I'm not 100% sure of this, but it looks like they were making the show anyways, but the producer had the good idea to approach Fleming and ask him if he would contribute and consult on the show. Fleming agreed, and they even said, well, hey, could we name the show Ian Fleming's Solo? And Ian Fleming was like, well, I like money.
Right.
Even though I'm sure he was already making buckets, at least I hope he was, from the Bond stuff. The United Artists guys over with James Bond said, whoa. Solo is a character in Goldfinger, which we're currently filming, and this is going to make it look like there's, this is no bueno, because it's could possibly kind of suggest to audiences that this was connected directly to the James Bond universe.
Uh-huh.
And so they settled after Fleming signed an affidavit that said his character Solo in Goldfinger has nothing, which it does have nothing to do with Napoleon Solo, who's our main guy in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. But the agreement was, okay, you can use the name, but you can't put it in your title. The Man from U.N.C.L.E features, it's contemporary for its time, mid-Cold War, 1960s. 2 agencies, both fictional. First is U.N.C.L.E, originally supposed to be vague. They didn't want to specify what it stood for. One of the ideas was that you could kind of project your own ideas onto what it meant. Here's the cool trivia on that. The United Nations was concerned that people would think that it had something to do with them. So they asked, they pressured the studio to specify what it stood for and to make sure that it didn't stand for United Nations. And so they came in and decided it stood for the United Network Command for Law and Enforcement.
Weren't you the one that spotted that at the end credits? They're like, thanks to and it was like a little cute joke they had at the end credits.
Oh yeah, that's right. Isn't it? They like thank U.N.C.L.E for cooperating with them in making the show.
Instead of saying "uncle," they write out the whole acronym.
Right.
Yeah.
Making it seem like, the way if you made a movie about, I don't know, the U.S. Army, you would thank them for their cooperation at the end. Well, the funny thing about this, they're doing the same thing, but it's a fictional organization. U.N.C.L.E, I just wanted to mention too, I don't know why I put it here, but that they have 5 main sections on different continents, each with a head dude, that are all like co-equal leaders of U.N.C.L.E. And our guys work for the North American section. But in 2 of the episodes that we looked at for doing this podcast, involved cooperation with the other sections of the other continents, which is a feature that I enjoyed about the show.
Yeah, it seems like they have a office in pretty much any of the Allied territories, I guess.
Well, I pulled it from a map in Waverly's office. You can see where the 5 heads, where the 5 stations are. They're basically all the main continents, the populated continents: North America, South America. There's one in India for Asia, one in Africa. What am I missing? Oh, and Europe, of course.
Right. Like I think they had a Berlin one, so I presume they had one all over Europe.
Yes. And just speaking of Europe real quick, just this morning I was thinking, if Pluto's not a planet, then Europe shouldn't be a fucking continent.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's neither here nor there, but it just suddenly occurred to me, like, where do these guys get off calling themselves a continent? And Greenland is not. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the definition of continent is. Thrush is the antithesis of uncle. And so, yeah, speaking of the 5 different, stations they have like all around the world, the idea here is that Thrush is such a dangerous organization to everyone that even governments that are ideologically opposed to each other, such as the US and the Soviet Union, would cooperate to defend against Thrush. Which is a cool idea. And that's part of why our 2 guys, we have an American and a Russian, seems to be a Russian national. I think they don't make that big of a
Ilya
deal.
Kuryakin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's a cool thing about Thrush. This didn't come up in the show, but in a series of novels that were based on the show, in those, it was revealed that Thrush was founded by Professor Moriarty's right-hand man after Moriarty's death in the Sherlock Holmes stories.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So based on, if you take the books as canon, then the Man from U.N.C.L.E. and the Sherlock Holmes stories exist in the same universe.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
All right. It gets weirder. Who directed both the modern Sherlock Holmes films and the most recent Man from U.N.C.L.E. film?
Wasn't that Guy Ritchie?
It was Guy Ritchie. So
that's cool that he picked up on that.
I think so. I don't think it would have really flown for him to have tried to connect them. But if you think about it, especially the kind of bad guys, if I remember the Sherlock Holmes films correctly, they seemed like exactly the kind of people that in a modern day would be like Thrush.
Right.
But I don't think that would, to tie them in and actually make that a shared universe kind of thing, I do not think would fly with audiences. But fun trivia. Anyways, how do you like our characters in the show?
I don't know. The show, it was kind of cool watching like old stuff, like 'cause it's fun seeing like how things were, I guess, filmed differently or portrayed differently. But a lot of it is very television-y, so it kind of has that choppy story progression. So I don't really think there was much of any characters. I was more kind of just watching the episode. You know what I mean? I do like the boss, but I usually tend to like the old experienced. He's kind of fun. What I did like was it wasn't as sleazy as the Bond films, even though that one episode we did watch with Fred was kind of creeper at the girls' high school. But some of the other ones, I felt less uncomfortable than I would have in some of the older Bond films.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think they kind of, I feel like they felt like they needed to kind of mirror that James Bond, that Sean Connery slimy energy a little bit, but they didn't go nearly as far with it. To their credit, in my opinion, I do like, I'm not a hyper fan of like old timey Nick at Night kind of fare. But But I certainly kind of can appreciate it when it comes across my plate, and especially under the context of this podcast, where we kind of go in with a analytic eye and try to educate ourselves more about television and movie history. It was definitely enjoyable on that level for me. I do really like Robert Vaughn and David McCallum. Robert Vaughn, like I said while we were watching it, he does some amazing teeth acting.
Oh yeah, I think the actors are fine. Like I don't have anything against the actor. It's just when you ask me what do you think about our character, I don't really see much of a character in the shows. You know what I mean? Because everything's kind of filmed like quick and here, let's get to the story. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the acting is pretty spot on. And I remember watching this and you were mentioning the teeth acting. I think yeah, he does a great job of that.
Another thing he does really well is he's always like, even when just when he's like interacting with someone or just following along behind them, and they're not necessarily paying close attention to him, he's always kind of just looking at him and really looks like he's thinking, he's evaluating, he's making internal decisions about them. And then Ilya seems like, kind of more reserved. They're not as, like, I see what you're saying. Like, they're definitely not as starkly drawn characters as you might see in other shows. I mean, who really knows anything about Napoleon Solo other than that he works for Uncle? Score by Jerry Goldsmith, which means Mr. Goldsmith is either older than I thought he was, or was very young when he did the work for this show. He did the original score, which they altered for each season in an attempt, as the 60s was booming along, to make it kind of more jazzy and more rock and roll. Goldsmith did not like the alterations. I wanted to flag that I couldn't tell if the end credits were, I didn't go back and verify that the end credits were different in each season. I think they're actually the same, but I thought that's the best piece of music with the kind of flute, the floating, soaring flute kind of running through the whole thing. And
yeah, a lot of the background music was kind of cool. It's very upbeat, or it kind of keeps it. Yeah, it was, especially for shows at the time. I think it was a pretty decent score.
The show usually has a formula. Well, it definitely has a formula in the titles of the episodes. It's always the blah 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 affair, the this affair, or the that affair. Kind of ties into my thing about when we first started this and started making our list of spy movies and spy television show. The preponderance of the word "the" being the first word in the title. It's always, the Ipcress file, the something affair, the man who knew too much. I think they're trying to give. I think it's trying to give like a kind of an air of this actually happened,
right?
Kind of thing. There's very few recurring characters. Really, just our two main guys and their boss, Mr. Waverly. And in each episode, pretty much they introduce in the credits at the beginning a guest star villain and a guest star innocent, or everyman character, as we like to call him on this show. Supposed to be like a more audience relatable character, because we still have to remember that even though James Bond had proven that a spy could be a hero, it's possible that TV show producers were still not entirely certain that audiences would fully identify with a secret agent character. Right. So kind of felt the need to put someone in there that could be someone that the audience could relate to a little more directly. My understanding is that there's almost always an innocent character, but I had to note we reviewed 4 episodes for this podcast, and there was only an innocent character in 2 of them. In at least 3, the villain was played by like a heavy hitter, very well-known actor. And I think the innocents, like, not so much. I think they just grabbed, anyone that was lying around from central casting or something. I
Were
thought
they ever like up and coming or something, and then ended up getting work elsewhere?
I don't know. I know that there's an episode that has who plays Captain Kirk?
William Shatner?
Yeah, has both William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy in it.
Oh, really?
But I don't know what roles they played. Mention as well, like what the other variations exist of the piece that we're looking at. In this case, there's 10 two-part episodes spread out through the 4 seasons, and each of those was released in Europe as a movie, some including extra action scenes, and in some cases the TV series has not extra scenes, but scenes that were cut for the movies, so they're a little bit different. There was also a spin-off show called The Girl from U.N.C.L.E, and of course in 2015 the Guy Ritchie film. I know it didn't do well in theaters, but from what I'm reading, people who have seen it describe it as being a lot better than audiences at the time gave it credit for.
Oh, well, we should add it to the list then.
It's been there. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What we're going to discuss in the briefing is how different they approached each season. They went from like regular to trying to be more campy, and then tried to get more serious. And I kind of saw it based on the 4 episodes we watched, but for the most part, it did have kind of that television feel, fast paced, like let's move the plot along type of thing. It was cool to kind of watch, finding out how much of an impact this show had in perpetuating the spy genre momentum, I guess.
Oh yeah.
You could definitely see a lot, and I'm sure there's a lot of films that were inspired with at least like one of the episodes.
Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
Let's take a brief look at season 1, episode 23. I picked these. I just did a quick check of like, I don't know, what do people say are the best episodes of the show, and just the first website I found, I just took their word for it for each season. For season 1, the episode 23, the Brain Killer Affair, was what we rolled up. Season 1, even though the pilot was filmed in color, but season 1, it's a black and white television show. I guess the thing to point out about this is just right at this time in history, that would have been, I guess, a budget issue and not an artistic choice. I think this is we're at the dawn of color, where like, I guess your big prime time television shows are going out in color. But your afternoon stuff or your less flagshipy kind of affairs are, I assume for budgetary reasons, sticking with the black and white.
Right.
Seasons 2, 3, and 4, because of the success of season 1, I guess that tells the studio, okay, we can spend the money, we can and should show this in color because audiences really like the show. But yeah, season 1. The Brain Killer Affair recap is Waverly, our guy's boss, is incapacitated by Thrush with kind of a poison that's enough to put him, I guess, kind of in a coma, but not kill him. And in that state, he's taken to a clinic that is completely Thrush infiltrated and Thrush controlled, where they're using hypnosis to try to get secrets out of him.
That whole thing kind of bugged me right off the bat. This is the head of U.N.C.L.E, and like they don't have proper security or watch on him, and then on top of that, take him to a hospital that isn't an U.N.C.L E ran spot, but whatevs. And the whole semi-conscious coma thing, I was really confused about at the beginning, like what was the purpose of it, until they actually showed they were trying to get secrets out of people and that they were successful at it. And then I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
You're absolutely right about, like, it's kind of really stupid that they just take him to a clinic that, isn't, I mean, they should have their own hospital.
Right.
They should have a place that they have vetted and control and can trust. It's very suspicious that he's taken to basically a clinic that is run by Thrush. It appears.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't even look like it's, just has been infiltrated. I mean, they've got two-way mirrors, they've got secret doors, all sorts of shit up in that.
Yeah.
But interrogating a guy that's in a coma, that is kind of solid.
Yeah.
The other parts of it all just were fiddly to me. Supposedly, there's this concept, like, before Waverly succumbs, he manages to whisper to Solo like a couple names and says have killed, or at least Solo thinks he said have killed, but later realizes, oh no, they were only half killed.
Right. Yeah.
And in the way that they're doing that with Waverly makes sense, but the other three guys is a lot weirder, I think. I mean, because there's one guy who's just kind of in a vegetative state, but randomly snaps out of it and tries to hit people in the back of the head with the hammer.
The brother?
Yeah.
I wonder if they were still learning and he was just kind of like a guinea pig.
Oh, you mean Thrush still? Oh, okay. Like a failed experiment.
Right. Because I think the lady had mentioned something like that. We didn't have the resource. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. The other two guys, I'm kind of confused as to why they were selected.
Right. And also like the technique itself. One of them, it just seems that the diplomat, it just seems that Thrush has like really messed around with, like, he was a very successful diplomat, and they've just caused a bunch of his missions to fail so that his career is on a downward spiral.
Right.
And then the other guy is like, I guess, a shipping magnate, and they fucked his business up enough that he like commits suicide.
Right.
So I just, between the four people, I don't see a consistency in like what is the plan here?
Yeah.
Only the Waverly thing makes sense. The other stuff is like, I don't know, kind of shotgun-ish.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they were more focused on the idea of the mind control than, I guess, making sense. Plus, it was like one of their first episodes, and so I guess, but yeah, and there seems to be a mind control theme, at least with the episodes we watched.
Tell me about it.
Well, there's the music box one and the one that we watched with Fred, and then there's this one where they're like kind of in a semi-coma, I guess. Then there was the weird radiation that like basically incapacitated people.
Right. Attacks on the nervous system.
Right. So there seemed to be a lot of, but this time period seems like that was what everybody was terrified of, was like mind control and radiation and stuff like that. So maybe they were just kind of like playing on that, or maybe we just happened to get the 4 episodes that all had this in it.
Very much. Well, very much so. What I think is happening here is, okay, you got the 60s, and you've got some people that are being captured overseas that are flipping the other side.
Yeah.
the red side of things, and people not being able to comprehend, like, how could you possibly, like, the idea of intentionally turning away from American values is so incomprehensible to people that it has to be mind control.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then you're looking at like the dropout culture and the hippies and stuff, and like people kind of joining what white bread Americans looked at and thought of as cults, but were actually just people experimenting with different ways to live and to go about things. At the same time, I think this is in the period of time, it was the 50s when like mind control seemed to be like something that scientists were starting to posit would be possible. I think it was like considered like leading edge technology. And these days, like to you and me, when we see any kind of mind control plot, we think cheesy, campy.
Yeah. Right.
Can't, this is obviously a movie that, you know, we're not supposed to take too seriously. I think it might have been much different for original audiences of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I think that they might have been much more like, oh my God, you know,
right.
this
Completely
is scary
impacted.
shit.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I had a note that I almost deleted from my notes where I had wanted to say that this episode, the Brain Killer Affair, had almost a kind of horror movie kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, it did kind of have like a looming kind of, yeah. It did kind of have, especially with the black and white. And I think we've been trained now post like so much color for decades that when we see black and white, it's supposed to be like feel creepy
Yeah,
or dark.
can. Well,
know?
I mean, but then you could also watch an episode of like Gunsmoke or something where, you know, it's black and white, but they're just out in the open air, and it doesn't have that like.
Oh, but I mean, for us these days,
Mhm.
you know, like anytime black and white's used, it's either used for like some super artistic reason, or I think more commonly to make things feel creepy or horrific. You know, like you get Schindler's List, you know, that was all black and white in the 90s. I was just watching a documentary with a friend, and they had like the commentators in like black and white. It was about like the history of the samurai in Japan. And even when it was colored, it was like kind of had like a grayish tone to it, or a filter they used.
Mhm.
So I think back then they would have been more used to like, okay, this is color and this is black and white. But for us these days, I think for you, like someone like you or me, I think we've been trained to see black and white as something for an artistic statement, or like usually something to be more scary, I guess.
Well, Psycho famously was, intentionally filmed in black and white,
Right.
which I didn't know for many years. But eventually I found out like, no, they totally had color back then. And it was actually kind of weird great choice by Hitchcock to film that one in black and white. I had to come back and put the note back in. Like I said, I actually had deleted it. I went back and I put it in when I found out who the actress is that plays the head villain in here is. Elsa Lanchester.
Okay.
She's best remembered. Her possibly best remembered role is she played the Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So that made me think like, okay, no, it's not just me.
Right.
There might be something to this. Well, that's that episode. This is, you tell me, like, give me your feeling. Like I kind of looked at a few vectors of information, mostly like the plot, like the plot in general, the sliminess issue, because I wanted to compare it to Bond, and the level of humor, because that's one thing that supposedly like that we were told to look for, like that the sense of humor would rise and fall in the episode. How did you feel about on those vectors, or anything else you want to talk about? Like, how did you like this episode, The Brain Killer?
Well, the story was kind of like like I said, you know, this is a lot of television, especially kind of drama-ish television, or like these like quick off episodes were written specifically to get the plot driving. So the story was kind of like a typical, like, here's the villains, here's the good guys. Oh, the villains almost win, the good guys win, you know, and then here's some interesting technology that'll make you think, you know. So that was fine considering the time period. The sliminess was way down. I did want to point out one thing, though, because, you know, we like to talk about tradecraft on this. We got a big theme from our MICE acronym, you know, money, ideology, compromise, and ego. The leading lady, Innocent, who's the sister of the brother that got basically put in the vegetative state, Solo keeps paying her for information. He even has a line, money works a lot faster than arguing with her, you know? And then later on, when he needs her to do something really big and she's not willing to because she's just trying to live her life, not only does he offer a shitload of money, but prior to that, he talks about that he can help her. He might be able to help save her brother, you know? So there's I don't know, maybe an ideology there or a compromise there would be going on. So it was very big highlighted on how he acquired her or recruited her as an asset. And we actually got a lot of good time spent on it. So I was actually kind of impressed for a show at that time period.
Yeah, I think
That they didn't make it easy. He didn't just show up and be like, I'll give you $5 for info. She actually was like resistant. Then he's listening to her talk and she's like, look, I don't have time. You see all these mannequins? I got to do all this by tomorrow morning or I'm going to lose a big client. And he just pulls out a 20, and as the story goes on, it develops more into like a relationship of like an established asset. And then when he needs something really big, he kind of really puts it on and offers way more money, So I was impressed with that as far as this episode, like this show goes, that there was a number of moments where we actually got like a good chunk of some, pretty well executed tradecraft.
Okay, I could see it that way. I felt a little uncomfortable with the way they played the money on her. I don't know. I felt bad watching some of those scenes.
I felt bad too. Okay. Yeah, I definitely felt bad. It wasn't like, hey, this is a great deal for the both of them. He's like, I'm picking up on the fact that money's tight and that you have to take care of this brother. What if I made those problems go away? It is definitely kind of creeper, in like, I'm taking advantage of this situation. I've recognized that you really need this. I have what you really need. Now dance for me. It definitely was uncomfortable. I'm just saying.
The part that bugs me is that to the extent that there were any humorous vibes in the show, that all of those were basically kind of laughing at her patheticness over the subject of money. And I didn't really like
they
that.
Definitely it was very uncomfortable. I completely agree. I'm not saying this was like, the best thing ever that humanity's ever accomplished, or you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a nice thing, but I thought it was well executed, and the fact that a TV show like this gave us that amount of time in developing it, I was kind of surprised with.
Sure. Yeah. Again, I just didn't appreciate being expected to giggle. Over the issues, which is what I think the show kind of wanted us to do in a couple places. I call it my least favorite of the four. I don't know if you thought about it in those terms. I'm not giving it a star.
Of all four,
but of the four, did you think about in advance? You don't have to, but did you think about like which one was your favorite?
I mean, I did not like the one we watched with Fred at all.
Okay,
that was definitely my least. This one at least had stuff for me to like kind of think about a little bit. But we'll get to. We're going to take a deep dive into the one we watched with Fred. But that's probably my least of the four. And then probably the season 2 one that we're about to talk about was probably.
Let's talk about season 2, episode 23, The Moonglow Affair. Do you want to remind me of the overall plot of that one?
Yeah, this is. Oh no, this is the ad agency one. No, this is definitely not my second to least favorite. No, this is actually cool because it didn't even focus on Solo and Ilya. It focused on one. First of all, all right. Well, let's talk about the premise before I get all
Let's do.
Sure. Yeah. This is the one with the radiation that like fucks up the nervous system one, right?
It is. We start out with our guys being suspicious of a secret lab underneath a cosmetics corporation headquarters. I couldn't tell. Are they in a mansion or something? It seems to be the place where they do their main business of this.
I think it was like a corporate building, but it looked like they also had party area. But I mean, if you're that level of a corporation, you're going to have all kinds of rooms, I guess. But it was like in the basement of their regular building or something.
Is where they were doing their lab stuff.
Right. And so Solo breaks in and there's a scientist waiting for him and starts flashing this light at him, but it's not just a light. I guess it's sending microwaves or radiation or something. And it completely disorients Solo and he can't talk. And they have to bring him in. And what they do is they introduce this new character, and she is like kind of like a upstart or an up and coming new agent within U.N.C.L.E, and they're going to have her get a job at the agency. And I don't know if it's an ad agency or a modeling agency, but she's basically getting a secretary job. And her partner that she's going to work with is another agent who's a seasoned, experienced agent and also happens to be played by Mr. Roper. So I was really excited. I was going nuts watching this episode with Todd, and I had to figure it out. And like, yeah, that was definitely Mr. Roper playing a badass spy with this young, beautiful new rookie agent within U.N.C.L.E, who's not just like a rookie. She's not like a bumbling rookie. She's like one of those like, I've gone to school and gotten like 4.5 GPAs. Like she knew all of the rules and was like, why is he coming on the field with me? I know men of a certain age are generally taken off the field. You know, like, so she like was citing like statutes and stuff. So it was like kind of like this big contrast between the two. And they were the main focus. Ilya ends up getting incapacitated at some point, and they're not even in the show. We get what, like maybe 5 or 10 minutes of them. The highlight is her, and then Mr. Roper. So it was fun. I liked it.
Yeah, it was an interesting episode. Like you say, at the very beginning, Solo gets hit with what I call drunk radiation, and Ilya gets captured. And then we have an entire episode focused on 2 other agents, which, again, great on you for recognizing Norman Fell as Mr. Roper. I wouldn't have caught that. And they had,
I was going nuts.
Completely different. They played the whole age thing. Mm-hmm. I thought very cutely.
It was, and it wasn't slimy or creep. No, you're right. It was very cute. All of it was very, very cute.
Yes. Yeah. In the background, well, let's see. I guess we'll talk about this first. I couldn't tell if there were any other episodes where we focus on other U.N.C.L.E agents other than Solo and Ilya. Mm-hmm. And if this was the only one where they did that, then maybe we shouldn't have picked it to cover if we're just covering like how the show usually is, if this is an anomaly. Mm-hmm. But I want to say, like, I could see a show have been like really cool if they had done a lot more of this. I think they could have been onto something here. I would like to see, if I could, go back and reconceptualize the entire show. I would have had like maybe 3 different pairs of secret agents and just rotate the episodes on who we're focusing on, but the other 4 agents are always like kind of involved in the background. And maybe start interconnecting like what, this mission, what influence maybe it had on what the other mission was doing over there would have been really exciting to me.
Yeah, I think that would have been a cool idea. It was really interesting seeing them like not be part of it. Like they were just kind of in the background while it was focused on the 2 new agents. But wait, so what is the villain's plot? They're trying to sabotage NASA, it's
called the Moonglow Affair,
right?
And there's a this is so fucking weird. There is a NASA launch of I guess like what the Apollo, you would call it the Apollo mission. This is the Moonglow mission.
Okay, right.
And simultaneously, the villains. Okay, well, the villain is also like working on plans for Thresh's space program, and he's also planning to sabotage the NASA Moonglow launch with a different variation of the drunk radiation. What they're doing is they're radiating food, and then if you eat the food, you'll get hit by the effects. And it seems that the whole reason U.N.C.L.E is investigating this cosmetics place is because they're wondering if there could be a connection between the Moonglow launch of the spaceship with the fact that this cosmetic agency is also planning a launch of a Moonglow lipstick.
Yeah, the glow-in-the-dark lipstick.
They're even like timing the big Moonglow lipstick launch party with at the same time as the Moonglow NASA mission, which there's no reason for those to be connected at all. And that was annoying to me.
Yeah. It was the only connection. Like, so the cosmetic agency, I guess, is the cover. And I guess they would have some sort of, because they can make the lipstick glow, but why were they calling it Moonglow, right? Like, you're talking about the connection between the names being the same was kind of silly.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Um,
But that's how what her name April, right? The young agent.
April is our young agent.
She gets hired as a secretary, and I guess the head of the cosmetic agency sees her, and he's like, "No, you have to be our new Miss Moonglow," which kind of gets her in a bigger step into the door of getting more information, because she's going to be the one that the model for wearing the Moonglow lipstick. I guess
our villain is bizarrely obsessed with micromanaging the lipstick campaign.
Yeah.
When he should be focused on his thrush responsibilities,
Right.
which I guess could be an interesting choice. I mean, as a character, maybe that's kind of a flaw of his, is like that even though he's got more important things to do, his ego is just so big that he has to be micromanaging like just everything about everything, even the details of his cover operation, which he should be leaving to his sister, but he just can't. In a very egotistic, misogynist way, which I don't want to say is, didn't annoy me because he was definitely portrayed in a bad light. But also just kind of funny. I was sitting there wondering, like, dude, why are you so concerned about, like, what fucking dress what kind of pick the fabric and pick the right girl and making all these decisions, dude. You've got thrush rocket plans to deal with. You've got much more important things to do than running this lipstick campaign.
Yeah. Absolutely. I thought, and one of the reasons he got involved is when he spotted her, and then he, I think, wanted to sleep with her at some point, and that's why he really wasn't listening to like the warnings of his sister. It definitely was. One of the cool things was like you have this like really creeper, cosmetic agency owner that's like kind of like sleazing up on the girl models, but the relationship between April and Mr. Roper was very professional. There was like no love interest there. It was just like experienced agent with like a new agent, type of thing. I kind of respected that.
Yeah, no sliminess whatsoever from Norman Fell, thankfully. Yeah. All the sliminess is put on the Thrush guy in this one. I liked this one better than the first one. I'll call it my second favorite episode that we watched. Mostly, I really did like the energy. The April character was really competent and got to do most of the heavy lifting, and I liked watching her work. And Norman Fell was really surprisingly good. As I say, like the villainous plot was pretty janky. With this whole like no reason for this connection between the Moonglow lipstick and the Moonglow mission that they're sabotaging.
Right.
Glow in the dark lipstick. I'm calling that stupid. Did not like it.
Right.
There was the humor that we got in this one was good humor. I thought, not jokey, not gaggy, like Get Smart kind of stuff.
Right.
But the humor that I saw in the show was mostly like playing around their age differences. And was, I thought, really handled really well. And I thought not just funny, but also just cute and endearing.
Yeah, it was nice. I enjoyed it. And a lot of the jokes were situational. It wasn't just like you said, gaggy. It was kind of like, I think it was more thought out. You know what I mean?
And we are going to cut it here after having discussed episodes from seasons 1 and 2 of The Man From U.N.C.L.E. Next week, we will come back with episodes from seasons 3 and 4. There is also a piece of bonus content that we've prepared for you for the sufficiently interested. It's available right now on our website, spieslikeus.net. What we did record our initial viewing of the Season 3, Episode 1, the Her Master's Voice Affair. That recording is synced with the episode, so if you want to, you could play the recording along with the TV episode, like a commentary track. You get it? If you don't have access to that TV episode, I will just mention briefly, you can get it from Amazon Prime Video for just $1.99, no sign-up required, or get it from wherever. Amazon is not paying us for this. There is a link to get the bonus commentary track. You can find the link in the show notes, whether you're listening right now on your favorite podcast app, or if you are listening at spieslikeus.net. Either way, it's basically a link to a YouTube video. Next week, we will begin with a general discussion of that particular episode, and also a general discussion of Season 4, Episode 1, the Summit 5 Affair. We're then going to do an in-depth tradecraft analysis from the Her Master's Voice episode. So, once again, the bonus content commentary track is completely optional, but if you are going to listen to it, the best time to do that would be in the next week before our regular Part 2 episode is released. I hope that all makes sense. Check it out. And looking forward to talking at you guys soon.
The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautix, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.